we're out here in front of the 2U studio, and I'm gonna show you how to measure and document the facade of a building. Before we get into that, take a minute and pause the video and look around, because we are in another 360 environment. You'll also see somewhere this piece of paper sort of digitally displayed, perhaps up in this region. So the first thing you have to do when you're documenting facade, like when you're measuring the inside of a building as well, is to find the longest dimension. So I've already actually measured from the far end of the building over here down to the sort of second wall-mounted 2U sign right across from that street light. That's about 64 feet plus or minus a few inches. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go sort of one window at a time and measure the sort of planned dimension across this facade. So if you're looking here at the piece of paper, I've got this piece of paper is actually a 1 foot square for each grid on this paper. This is a 1-inch grid that's divided into 1/4 inches. So hopefully this won't blow on us here too much. We're sort of dodging rain right now. Anyway, I'm gonna get to the other end here. So we'll see that each of these window openings are 17 feet across this window opening. When I look at this other window opening, this one's also 17 feet. The big opening here for the main entrance is actually 18 feet, so it's a little bigger. I've already pre-measured some of this, so I know that the other 2 windows far down are also 17 feet. This is a very modular design that we're looking at. Before I can plot those 17-foot windows out onto the paper, though, we do need to know the size of each of these pilasters between them. So the end of this, we have 3.5 feet. This one here is 3'2". And I'll get to that next one in a minute, because I got a lot of things in my head I got to think about here. So because we're drawing at 1/4 inch, I'm going to call this the ground level. We'll figure the slope out in a bit. This is 1, 2, 3 feet, 3.5, we said. And then a 17-foot window. Well, I know that one of these squares is 4 feet total, so 16 plus a little to get me to that 17. So there's my 17-foot mark. We said 3'2". Well, it's a little under this line for 3'2". Again, these don't have to be drawn exactly perfectly, but I do want to stress that drawing this out on a piece of graph paper is the best way you can document any building if you're doing it by hand. You could sketch it out on a clean white piece of paper and write all the dimensions down, but the reality is you're not drawing it to scale, and you might make a mistake or miswrite a number or not be able to read your numbers later. When you draw it to scale, it's right. It's still good to put all of these dimensions down, 3'6", 17, 3'2", so that you can double check your work when you get to the end. But by drawing it to scale, it does take a little longer, but you end up with a much more accurate drawing in the end, right? So now I've got my 2 17-foot wide windows, and now I've gotten to this other pilaster that I still need to measure. So in this case, we've got 1 foot, 1.5, and 3'5". So we'll call it 1, 1, and 3'5". That gives you a 4'6" opening there. So there's 4, there's 6. And I called this 1, just over 1. And now I've gotten myself to the door frame. So we're saying 1, 1. Sorry, that looks like a 7. And 3'5". And then an 18-foot opening for the door, right? So I know that's 16 feet, that's 18, so it's a little back from there. So that's the edge of the far window wall where the entrance to the 2U studio is. I'm not going to measure beyond that because it's a perfect mirror over there, and we could just sort of populate it in another drawing if we wanted to on another sheet of paper. So now I've got those horizontal dimensions. Now we need to get some of these vertical dimensions to make sure that we're sort of plotting it appropriately. It's good to work from the ground up, and the first thing we need to do is figure out the slope. That's always a little tricky. How we do that takes some thinking. Right, where we look at this, we notice, okay, we've got this window and it's got this slope here that comes down to the curb, and this drops down. And if we look all the way down the side of the building, we see that that's perfectly lined up. So we can figure the slope out by basically measuring the vertical dimension at the far end to that horizontal line. And then we could come down here to the door, measure there, and split the difference between the two. So here I've got 5 inches. And then when I come down to the far end of the 2U door and measure that one, we'll see that this is going to be a lot deeper. All right, same dimension, 26 inches. So I go from 5 inches to 26 inches. That tells me my slope. So I know that that 5-inch drop is right below that line where the window ends, right? So 5 inches is about here. And then the far end, I'm coming down, this is the same line here you're seeing. And I said I came down 2 feet, 2 inches, right? So that's about there. And then we can simply, I have to put that down, draw, connect the dots game, right? To see what our pitch is along that wall. I'm doing my best to guess there, and that's a pretty good guess. So now I know the slope of that wall as it goes across. We do need to where the building meets the ground. Obviously, the floor is not going to be sloped. Now we need to plot the vertical location of these, of the windows themselves. So we know where the slope starts. Admittedly, this is a little bit of eyeballing because I'm coming up from that 5 inches. Can't do it exactly perfectly, but you kind of line that up the best you can. I've got about 1.10 foot to the window, and then the actual height of the window is 5 feet 8 inches. So 110 to the bottom of the window, 5'8" to the top. So when we come to this ground, we come in 110, just below the 2 foot mark, 5'8". These are each 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8. So now we've got a window, 5'8". Call this 110, 5'8". Got our dimensions. And at that point, we actually are pretty confident that we can sort of come across and strike that line for all of the windows, right? Even though this line doesn't exist on the facade, it's going to line up with every single window that we have on this drawing, right? Because we've already measured their plan locations, and now we just need to measure some of the other details with the vertical height of this thing. We also know the bottom, the sill height of the window. There's 1 window, there's 2 windows. The 2U entrance door is a little different because if you look at that, there's a door width and then the window starts. So some of that is actually door. We'll have to plot that out too. We know where this pilaster is. That's going to go all the way up. This pilaster is also going to go all the way up. This pilaster is going to go all the way up. And likewise, you get the idea. Now, this one too. Well, now we're at the end of the building, but we don't know the second floor yet or the roof. I gotta get that straight. When we want to start looking at higher dimensions, this is where it does get a little tricky. Earlier, I got lucky with this tape measure, and I was able to get all the way up to the top of that roof. It is a little easier if you can get the laser when you don't have something to hit with the laser. It's hard to actually get it to work, right? So let's see if we can do this again. I'm using the inside corner to work my way up. And obviously I'm lucky that the building is this tall, but nope, not gonna work. Got close. We'll try the laser. If your building is taller, if you can get on the roof, that's the best option, right? I'm gonna have to work from about here and see if I can get up to about there. Yeah, it's being a little tricky for me, but let's try this. In terms of the height of these windows, all right. We got that at about 3 feet. And when we're looking at these windows, I can do at least a gauge on the height of the window from the baseline of the window. So I'm basically coming out from here to get to a point, and it is a bit of guesswork, admittedly. to measure the height of that. But we're also gonna do some assessment of the facade based on information we can also collect from the inside. So the chances that you're only measuring a facade without access to the inside of the building is also unlikely, right? So if you're measuring the facade, we could go in and measure the window from the inside and start plotting some of the points that way as well. So we do know at least that the sort of start of the window is at about 3 feet. Looking at the facade here, it is a little different in terms of the overall height. And I'm going to give it sort of one more go to see if I can at least get to the top of that window. So if we know that this is 3, yep, that's 3'1", and we can get in to that window there. We're not. I can at least get that long dimension. I can get that to turn over on me. There we go. So I'm seeing that as from that window down is about 2'6". And I know that that's at a hypotenuse, not straight up and down. But again, we're kind of giving this some eyeball numbers because we would go in to measure from the inside as well. So we'll call that 2'6" to the sill. And we would document this and again, double check from inside. The window unit upstairs does look a little shorter from the ones that are outside. And I did pre-measure the top of that. And so I remember getting up to, if these are 5'8", 3, we'll call those 5. And the rest of the building was another 5 feet above that. So it was about here, if I remember. So having the information from both, as much as you can get from the outside, if you can get on the roof to drop a tape to the ground or use the laser from the top to get down. Obviously, if you have a cornice or something overhanging the side of the building, it makes it a little easier because you can just put the laser on the ground, shoot right up to the cornice, and you know the overall height. It is a little easier in that respect. I do want to at least try from this one spot here. I can probably get to the top of that. All right, and so that is 18 feet. And so we can double check because I was right here next to this pilaster. So I was just put the laser right there and I went up 18 feet to get to the top of the window. So in this case, we'd say to get up to, this is 4 feet to there, almost 3 feet to there. So that's 3, I need 15 more feet, right? So there's 2, 6, 10, 14, 15. Yeah, that's definitely not right because that window would be really short if that were the case. So when you do that, again, drawing to scale is pretty helpful because if you mismeasure, you can double check it. All right. So if I was 18 feet from the ground, let's double check if I had that right or not. Again, 18 feet from there. Out here, a little different. Yeah, still 18 feet. So clearly, maybe I was just doing bad math on this sheet here, right? So if that's 4, 8, 12, 16, 18, I guess I'm getting the dimension. It's just a shorter window than I thought. I guess I mismeasured that on my estimation to begin with, right? So if that's the case, we know the head height of our window is here for all of them. They all come across at that 18 feet. Looks like it's the same above the 2U entry. And that's the one that's different, right? Because that line doesn't exist at the entry. This line exists here and here. And the sill height, that's the one we can't really get with a laser because we can't shoot into the side of the window there. And those are shorter windows up top. We knew that much. Yeah, so that's this. This is the bottom frame of the window here. And one of the things we got from both the inside and the outside is we're seeing that the windows are equally divided into 4 spaces. And this is one where you can measure it, certainly. But if you want, it's almost not even worth measuring and marking it because they're all 4-foot windows. If they're equally spaced, even on this drawing, you can see these are sort of 4-foot spaced windows roughly. And that's exactly where we need to be, right? Equally spaced windows. And again, I'm sort of doing this relatively quickly, and that's okay, provided you're marking down the sort of notes to go along with it, right? That we know this is sort of window, 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 versus, you know, the part that's sort of slope, slope. You know, down here has this slope from there. Oh, actually, I didn't draw that, did I? It's supposed to be on there. Slope, slope. And obviously photographic documentation to help you, remind you of what it is you're doing. This pilaster would not have that. Oh, it has a reveal line on the facade, but it's not a sort of form line. And so using line weights to sort of help remind you as well. This is a little thicker because it's recessed back in there. You know, window, window, window. Lower windows are taller. And then the big one that's the hardest one to get is that top. And so we're going to go with my initial measurement that I estimated earlier when I was able to move the tape better. And this would be one that, you know, we would obviously want to get our sort of best estimate as we could. So we would say, well, let's get up on the roof, let's drop a tape. That's really the best we can do because we don't have the cornice to really get the laser up to. And just kind of looking at this and looking at the building, I'm thinking that might be a little tall based on what we actually have here out on site. And so that would be one where we'd say, well, we really need to verify this, because not at all times whenever you're measuring a building like this, you don't necessarily have access to all the information or access to, you know, if I had a really tall ladder, it would obviously make it easier, other things like that. But, you know, we don't have all those right now at this moment. So we're sort of doing the best we can. The other thing we're seeing is that at this point in the building, you actually have this part of the building that goes a little higher. And we'd have to say, you know, we're also need to verify the height of these as we go along. And so the only other thing we haven't really put into this yet would be our front door. So let's just go look at that piece before we call it on this particular drawing. So when we're looking at the front door, we've got a double door. You're probably only able to see the one door. And this one is 6'6" wide, and I got this whole crew behind that door that you can't see. And when we get to this 6'6" wide door, half foot to 6, right there, right where I left that line. How about that? We know we have this double door opening. You can see that there's these sort of two larger panes that go up. Actually, I can measure that one. That one's easier. Not too tall. All right, so that's 3'8" above the head of the door. And then the head of the door, yeah, I say easy, but it isn't, clearly. I'll let you stay on there. 7-foot door, 3'8". And that just about doesn't line up with our window system, but that's okay. So we said 7-foot door, there's a bit of a step right there. Got this 7-foot door. Mullion that runs up along the side of the door. That's 2'8". There's the 3'8". So yeah, that mullion line is a little higher. All right, so there's a mullion line here. There's a mullion line along the side of the door. And then there's one that's centered between these two openings. And then the mullions that go all the way around. I'll just draw these. I'm not going to draw the mullions on the rest of it, but they are there. But this is how you would continue to document this. And so now we can see where that opening is. And, you know, you may add notes to the effect of like the depth of these facades. You know, here's this one. Here's the mullion for the double door. Here's the double door itself. This sort of dashed opening. Reminder of the fact that that's a door. Window, window, window. Glass door, glass door. And the only other things we might want to measure would be some of these depths. right? We could say that this pilaster is 2'3" deep. That's consistent across. The only other one that's a little different is this pilaster being six inches out. So we could say this is sort of plus 6 inches. We could say this is 0 and this is negative, what did I say, 1'3" back? I'll double check that. Yeah, 1'3". So now we have that layering depth of what's happening on the facade, right? We're calling, the main part of the facade is this 0-inch depth, and then the rest of it either comes out 6 inches in front of the door or is recessed back 1'3". The only other one, again, beyond that I can't get a measurement of right now is above the 2U Studios sign. The 2U Studios sign is on this part of the facade that sort of sticks out significantly further. It looks like a couple more feet. That would have to be one that, again, if we could get up to the roof, we could measure out to get the exact dimension of that to be more careful, as well as to get our 2 cornice heights that, I clearly have not been able to figure out yet. And so we would say, depth of that, and it starts at a point that's right about here and springs from that part. So this slopes out, slope out, and now I've got sort of all the primary values that we're looking for on this particular facade. A few things that we weren't able to get to, but we were able to at least get most of the information and know where we need to go to get the rest of it. So I hope this is helpful in terms of learning how to document by drawing to scale, whether it's an inside room or an outside facade in this case. It's really helpful if you're not able to do it right in the computer on the spot. So there's a couple methods you could do here, and we'll see you in the next video.